The great chamber was silent. 159 alien delegates sat in their seats, watching the two humans who stood at the center of the room. The ceiling above them showed the light of distant stars, projected through crystal glass that had been built 1,000 years ago. Ambassador Daniel Price was 63 years old. His hair had turned silver long ago, and his face showed the lines of a man who had spent his life fighting battles with words instead of weapons. He wore the simple dark uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, with no medals or decorations. Beside him stood Admiral Lisa Hartley, a woman of 50 with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too many good soldiers die in wars that were not their own. They had come to ask for something simple. They had come to ask for respect. For 300 years, humanity had served the Galactic Council. When the Velithri needed ships to patrol their borders, humans answered the call. When the Marathi suffered a plague that killed millions, human doctors found the cure. When the Threllian trade routes became too dangerous for travel, human engineers built the navigation beacons that saved countless lives. Humans had bled for this council. They had died for it. They had given everything they had, asking for nothing in return except a seat at the table. A voice in the decisions that shaped the galaxy. Today, the council had given its answer. The Velithri High Speaker rose from his seat. He was tall, nearly 8 feet, with a hard shell covering his body and 4 arms that ended in sharp claws. His species had ruled the council for 2,000 years. They saw themselves as the masters of the galaxy, and they saw everyone else as servants. "The vote is complete," the High Speaker said. His voice was cold, like stones grinding together. "Humanity's request for a permanent seat on the council is denied. You will remain a provisional species, as you have been for the past 3 centuries. Daniel felt his hands tighten into fists at his sides. He forced himself to breathe slowly. "May I ask the reason for this decision?" he said. The High Speaker made a sound that might have been laughter. "You are young," he said. "Your species has existed for only a moment compared to ours. You have not earned the right to sit among the founding races." "We have served this council for 300 years, Lisa said. Her voice was steady, but Daniel could hear the anger beneath it. "Our ships protect your borders. Our engineers keep your stations running. Our doctors have saved more lives than we can count. And you are paid for these services," the High Speaker replied. "What more do you want?" "Recognition," Daniel said. "A voice in the decisions that affect us. The same rights you give to species who have done far less than we have." The chamber filled with strange sounds. Clicking, hissing, and waves of telepathic amusement rolled through the room. The delegates were laughing at them. 159 alien beings representing civilizations that had existed for thousands of years were laughing at the humans who had given everything to serve them. The Marathi ambassador pulsed with colored light. The translation device in Daniel's ear converted the pattern into words. "Know your place, young ones. Be grateful for what you have." Daniel looked at Lisa. Her face was like stone, but her eyes burned with fury. She gave him a small nod. This was the moment they had prepared for. They had hoped it would not come to this. They had believed, foolishly perhaps, that the council would finally see the truth. But the truth was simple and cruel. The council did not respect humanity. The council had never respected humanity. To them, humans were useful tools. Nothing more. Daniel turned back to face the High Speaker. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. "Then humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council," he said. "This decision is effective immediately. All treaties between Earth and the Council are ended. All agreements are cancelled. All obligations are finished." The laughter stopped. For a long moment, there was complete silence in the chamber. Then the High Speaker leaned forward, his dark eyes fixed on Daniel's face. "You cannot be serious," he said. "I am completely serious," Daniel replied. Every human ship will leave Council space within 60 days. Every human worker will return to Earth. Every piece of human technology will be removed from Council stations and worlds. This is madness, the Threllian delegate said. His forearms waved in distress. You cannot simply leave. We can, Lisa said. And we will. You made it clear today that our contributions mean nothing to you. Very well. Let us see how you manage without them. The High Speaker rose to his full height. You will regret this decision, he said. The Council has existed for 5,000 years. We do not need humans. Daniel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I hope you are right, he said. For your sake, I truly hope you are right. He turned and walked toward the door. Lisa walked beside him, her boots echoing on the stone floor. Behind them, the chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted at each other in a dozen languages. The High Speaker called for order, but no one was listening. Outside the chamber, a young human aide was waiting for them. His name was Peter Walsh, and his face was pale with worry. Sir, he said to Daniel, what happened in there? We left, Daniel said simply. Peter stared at him. Left? You mean we are actually going through with it? Yes. Daniel kept walking, his pace steady and sure. Send word to all human vessels. Begin immediate recall procedures. Every ship, every station, every outpost. We are going home. Lisa walked beside him in silence for a moment. Then she spoke quietly. Do you think they understand what they have done? Not yet, Daniel said. But they will. Soon enough, they will. Behind them, the sounds of argument and confusion faded as they walked away from the council chamber. 300 years of service. 300 years of sacrifice. 300 years of being treated like servants instead of partners. Thought it was over now. Humanity was going home, and the galaxy was about to learn a very hard lesson about the price of disrespect. 20 days had passed since the announcement. 20 days since Ambassador Daniel Price had walked out of the council chamber. 20 days since humanity had told the galaxy that they were leaving. At first, the council did not believe it. The High Speaker gave speeches about how humans were bluffing. Other delegates said that Earth would come back with its tail between its legs, begging for forgiveness. They laughed and made jokes about the foolish, young species that did not know its place. They were not laughing anymore. Station Commander Kevin Marsh stood on the main deck of Nexus Prime, the largest trading hub in the Outer Territories. Around him, his team of human technicians worked quickly and quietly, powering down systems and packing equipment. Alien merchants and travelers stood at the edges of the dock, watching with fear in their eyes. Nexus Prime had been built by humans 60 years ago. Before that, the Outer Territories had been too dangerous for trade. Pirates and raiders attacked any ship that tried to pass through. The Council had done nothing about it. They said the Outer Territories were not important enough to protect. Humans had disagreed. They built Nexus Prime, installed defense systems, and made the shipping lanes safe. Now 300 species use this station every day. Billions of credits flowed through its markets. All because humans had been willing to do the work that no one else would do. A Threllian merchant pushed through the crowd. His forearms were shaking, and his voice was high with panic. Please, he said to Kevin, you cannot turn off the navigation beacons. Without them, the shipping lanes are death traps. Asteroids, radiation fields, gravity wells. Ships will be destroyed. People will die. Kevin stopped what he was doing and looked at the merchant. His face was tired. He had not slept well in weeks. None of them had. Those beacons were installed by human engineers, Kevin said. They run on human technology. They have been maintained by human workers for 60 years. The Council voted that our contributions did not matter. I guess you will have to manage without them. The Threllian made a sound of distress. But that is not fair. We never voted against you. The Threllians have always been friends to humanity." Kevin shook his head slowly. "Then where were you when the vote happened? Where were your voices speaking up for us?" "I did not hear any Threllian delegate defending humanity in that chamber." The merchant had no answer. He stepped back, his arms hanging limply at his sides. Kevin returned to his work. There was no pleasure in this. He took no joy in watching these people suffer. But for 300 years, humanity had been treated like servants, like tools to be used and then forgotten. If leaving was the only way to make the galaxy see the truth, then so be it. Far across the galaxy, on a small frontier world called Kaltos Ix, a different scene was playing out. Dr. Samantha Gray had lived on Kaltos Ix for 15 years. She was the only doctor for 500 miles in any direction. The local people, the Kaltosians, were a gentle species who had never developed advanced medicine. When she arrived, their children died from diseases that human science had cured centuries ago. She had changed that. She built a clinic with her own hands. She trained local nurses. She developed treatments for diseases that no other species had bothered to study. She had delivered over 2,000 babies and saved more lives than she could count. Now, she was packing her bags. Outside her clinic, a crowd had gathered. Kalthasians of all ages stood in silence, watching her through the windows. Some of the older ones were crying. The children did not understand what was happening. They only knew that the kind human doctor was leaving. The village elder, an old Kalthasian named Torath, came into the clinic. His movements were slow and painful. Samantha had been treating him for a heart condition that would have killed him years ago without her care. "Please," Torath said. His voice was weak, but his eyes were desperate. "Please do not go. Without you, our children will die. Our sick will have no one to help them." Samantha felt tears burning in her eyes. She turned away so he would not see them. "I am sorry," she said. "I am so sorry. But the council made it clear that humanity is not wanted here. Perhaps they will send someone to replace me." They both knew the truth. No one would come. The council had never cared about Kaltos Ix. They had never cared about any of the small, unimportant worlds that humans had chosen to help. Only humanity had looked at these forgotten places and decided that they mattered. On the Marathi homeworld, the lights flickered for the first time in 800 years. The massive fusion grid that powered their entire civilization had been designed and maintained by human engineers. Without them, no one knew how to fix the problems that were starting to appear. On the Villa 3 military command station, admirals stared at their screens in confusion. Their targeting systems were locked behind encryption codes that only humans could unlock. Their ships could still fly, but they could not shoot straight. In a galaxy full of enemies, this was a death sentence. Emergency meetings were held across council space. The High Speaker demanded that humanity stop its withdrawal immediately. He threatened. He bargained. He even tried to bribe them. Admiral Lisa Hartley sent back a single message that was broadcast on every frequency in the galaxy. "You had 300 years to value us. You chose not to. This is not a negotiation." The words hit the council like a hammer. For the first time in 5,000 years, they were afraid. They had thought humans were weak. They had thought humans needed them more than they needed humans. They had been wrong. On Earth, the returning ships were met with cheers. Millions of people gathered at spaceports to welcome home their brothers and sisters. The message from the government was simple and clear. We will no longer beg for scraps from people who see us as less than equals. We know our worth, even if the galaxy does not dot in the council chamber. The High Speaker sat alone on his throne. The other delegates had fled to their homeworlds, desperate to deal with the crises that were already beginning. The great room was empty and silent. He looked up at the crystal ceiling, at the light of distant stars. And he felt something he had never felt before in his long life. He felt afraid. The humans were really leaving, and the galaxy was about to discover just how much it had depended on them all along. 60 days had passed. The withdrawal was complete. Every human ship had left Council space. Every human worker had gone home. Every piece of human technology that could be moved had been packed up and taken away, and the galaxy was falling apart. Counselor Marcus Webb sat in a quiet room on Earth, watching the reports come in from across the stars. Next to him, strategic analyst Megan Cross worked at her screen, marking the spreading zones of chaos with red light on a holographic map. The Valathri have lost 6 colony worlds this week, Megan said. Her voice was flat, professional, but Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. The Kathrani swarm is pushing through their borders faster than anyone expected. Marcus nodded slowly. The Kathrani were an enemy that the galaxy had feared for centuries. They were a hive mind, billions of creatures controlled by a single intelligence. They did not negotiate. They did not make peace. They only consumed and destroyed. For 200 years, human ships had held the Kathrani at bay. Human soldiers had died by the thousands defending borders that were not their own. Human commanders had developed the tactics that kept the swarm from spreading across the galaxy. Now, those ships were gone. Those soldiers were home, and the Kathrani were pouring through the gaps like water through a broken wall. What about the Marathi? Marcus asked. Megan pulled up another screen. Their power grid failed completely 3 days ago. They are using emergency generators, but those will only last another week. After that, their cities go dark. Their hospitals stop working. Their food storage systems shut down. And they have no one who can fix it? No one who understands human technology well enough. They are asking everyone for help, but no one is answering. The other council species are too busy dealing with their own problems. Marcus leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Part of him felt satisfaction. This was justice, in a way. The galaxy had treated humanity like servants for 300 years. Now, they were learning what those servants had really been worth. But another part of him felt only sadness. Innocent people were dying. Children on distant worlds were going hungry because the systems that fed them had stopped working. None of them had voted against humanity. None of them had laughed in that council chamber. The guilty and the innocent were suffering together. That was the way of such things. A message alert appeared on his screen. Marcus opened it and saw a familiar face. It was Peter Walsh, the young aide who had been with Ambassador Price on the day of the withdrawal. He was older now, his face showing the stress of the past 2 months. "Sir," Peter said, "we have a delegation at the border. Former council members. They are requesting a meeting with Ambassador Price." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Which species?" "Velathri, Marathi, and Threlian. They say they want to discuss terms for humanity's return." Marcus almost laughed. Almost. "Tell the ambassador. I am sure he will want to handle this personally." An hour later, Ambassador Daniel Price sat in a communication room, looking at a holographic image of 3 alien beings. The Velathri envoy stood in the center, his hard shell dull and scratched, his eyes dark with exhaustion. The Marathi delegate pulsed with weak, flickering light. The Threlian merchant wrung all 4 of his hands together nervously. They looked nothing like the proud, arrogant creatures who had laughed at humanity 60 days ago. "Ambassador Price," the Velathri envoy began. His voice was rough, almost humble. "The Council recognizes that perhaps mistakes were made regarding humanity's status." Daniel waited. He did not speak. He wanted to hear what they would say next. "We are prepared to offer the permanent seat you requested," the envoy continued. "Full voting rights. Recognition as a founding class civilization. Everything you asked for, and more. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the soldiers who had died defending Velithri borders. He thought about the doctors who had cured Morati plagues. He thought about the engineers who had built the stations and beacons that kept the galaxy running. 300 years, he finally said. 300 years of service. 300 years of sacrifice. And we had to threaten to leave before you offered what should have been given freely. The Velithri envoy lowered his head. Yes, he said. We were wrong. We admit this. Tell me something, Daniel said. If we return now, how long before the crisis passes and you forget your promises? How long before we are back to being useful tools that do not deserve respect? The envoy did not answer. He could not answer because they both knew the truth. The council had not changed. They were only afraid. Once the danger passed, they would go back to their old ways. Humans would be servants again, and the cycle would continue. Daniel shook his head slowly. Humanity will not return to the council, he said. That door is closed forever. However, we will consider mutual defense treaties with individual civilizations who demonstrate genuine partnership. Equal partnership based on respect and shared benefit. Not master and servant. Not ruler and tool. Partners. But the Kethrani, the Morati delegate, pulsed desperately. They will destroy us all. Then find a way to stop them, Daniel replied. You have existed for thousands of years. You have technology we cannot imagine. You have resources beyond counting. Use them. Defend yourselves. We will not do it for you anymore. Please, the Threlian merchant begged. We have always been friends to humanity. We need your help. Daniel's eyes were hard. If you want our help, then come to us as equals. Sign a treaty that recognizes humanity as your partner, not your servant. Trade with us fairly. Work with us honestly. We will not save those who cannot be bothered to respect us. The transmission ended. The three delegates stood in silence, their hopes crushed. They returned to their crumbling alliance with empty hands and heavy hearts. On Earth, Daniel Price walked out of the communication room and found Admiral Lisa Hartley waiting for him. How did it go? She asked. They offered us everything we asked for, Daniel said. 60 days ago, I would have taken it. Today, it means nothing. They are only afraid. Fear is not the same as respect. Lisa nodded. So what happens now? Daniel looked out the window at the night sky, at the stars that humanity had served for so long. Now we build something new, he said. Something better. Something based on what we should have demanded from the beginning. Real partnership. Real equality. Real respect. Lisa smiled grimly. And if the galaxy burns while we do it? Then it burns, Daniel said. We tried to save them for 300 years. It is time they learn to save themselves. Or learn to ask us properly. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the Kethrani swarm was spreading. The council was dying. The old order was crumbling. And humanity was finally truly free. 6 months had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The old council still existed, but only in name. The great chamber where the founding races had ruled for 5,000 years now sat empty most days. The Velithri homeworld was under siege. The Morati had split into 3 factions, each blaming the others for their collapse. The Threlians had abandoned their trade, routes, and retreated to their core worlds. Galaxy that had laughed at humanity was now drowning in its own arrogance, but humanity was not watching from the sidelines. They were building something new. Captain Ryan Cole stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Endeavor, looking out at the stars ahead. His ship was not a warship, though it carried enough weapons to defend itself. It was an explorer, a trader, a symbol of what humanity had become. "Captain," said his communications officer, Nicole Bradley. She was young, only 25, but she had proven herself a dozen times over during their journey. "We are receiving signals from the Tesseran system. They want to know if we are still coming." Ryan smiled. "Tell them we will be there in 6 hours. And tell them we are bringing gifts." The cargo hold of the Endeavour was filled with seeds, medical supplies, and construction equipment. These were not charity. They were trade goods offered in exchange for knowledge, resources, and partnership. 6 months ago, the Tesserans had been a forgotten people. Their world was rich with fertile soil, but the Council had never cared about agricultural planets. They wanted weapons, ships, and soldiers. Food could be synthesized in machines. Humanity had different ideas. When the Tesserans sent out a desperate call for help after the Council collapsed, humanity answered. Not with soldiers, but with farmers. Not with weapons, but with seeds. They taught the Tesserans new ways to grow crops that could feed billions. In return, the Tesserans shared their knowledge of plants and medicines that grew nowhere else in the galaxy. It was a partnership. Real partnership. The kind humanity had begged the Council for and never received. Nicole pulled up a list on her screen. "Captain, we have received requests from 47 systems. They all want to join the human partnership." Ryan shook his head slowly. "Not partnership. I keep telling everyone, we are not building another council. We are not making an empire. We are building a network of friends. Each world stays independent. Each world makes its own choices. We just help each other when help is needed." Nicole nodded, though she looked uncertain. "Some of the other captains think we should be more aggressive. The Velathri are weak. We could take their territory, claim their resources, make humanity the new rulers of the galaxy." Ryan turned to face her. His eyes were serious. "Do you know why we left the council, Nicole?" She thought for a moment. "Because they did not respect us?" "That is part of it," Ryan said. "But the deeper reason is that the council was built on the wrong foundation. They believed that some species were better than others. They believed that power came from controlling others. They looked at the galaxy and saw things to own, not people to help." He turned back to the viewport. "If we conquer the Velathri, we become what they were. We become masters instead of partners. And in 100 years, some other species will do to us what we did to them. The cycle will never end." Nicole was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded slowly. "I understand, Captain." "Good," Ryan smiled. "Now, let us go make some friends." Far across the galaxy, on the world of Kaltozeeks, Dr. Samantha Gray had returned. She had left 6 months ago with tears in her eyes, believing she would never see her clinic again. But things had changed. The council was gone. The old rules no longer applied. And Kaltozeeks had asked for her help not as a servant, but as a partner. She walked through the village she had protected for 15 years. The people smiled and waved at her. Children ran up to her and grabbed her hands, pulling her toward the new medical center that they had built together. The village elder, Toreth, was waiting for her at the door. He was older now, but his eyes were bright with hope. "Dr. Gray," he said, his voice warm with welcome. "You came back." Samantha smiled. "I said I would. As long as you still want me here." "Always," Toreth said. "But things are different now. We are not your patients anymore. We are your partners." He led her inside the medical center. It was 3 times the size of her old clinic. Local Calthasians worked at every station, doing jobs that only humans had done before. They had learned. They had grown. They no longer needed humans to save them. They needed humans to teach them how to save themselves. "We have trained 12 doctors," Toreth said proudly. They are not as good as you yet, but they are learning. And we have started building clinics in other villages. Soon, all of Kaltos Ix will have medical care. Samantha felt tears in her eyes again, but this time they were tears of joy. This was what humanity should have been doing all along. Not carrying the galaxy on their shoulders, but lifting it up so it could stand on its own, on the edge of known space. Human explorers were pushing into regions that the Council had declared forbidden for centuries. They found resources beyond imagination. They found habitable worlds waiting to be settled. They found ancient ruins of civilizations that had died long before the Council existed. And they found something else. Something unexpected. Other species who had been cast out by the Council. Refugees. Exiles. Peoples who had been conquered and forgotten. They had survived in the dark places of the galaxy, waiting for someone to remember them. Now humanity found them and offered them a hand. "Join us," the human explorer said. "Not as servants, not as subjects, as friends, as partners, as equals." One by one, the forgotten peoples of the galaxy joined the growing network. Each brought their own skills, their own knowledge, their own strength. Together, they began to build something that the Council had never imagined. A community based on respect, a network based on trust, future based on partnership. Back on Earth, Ambassador Daniel Price watched the reports come in from across the stars. Beside him stood Admiral Lisa Hartley, her face showing something that might have been hope. "It is working," she said quietly. "It is actually working." Daniel nodded. "The Council built its power on fear and domination. We are building ours on something stronger. Something that lasts." "What is that?" Daniel looked out the window at the busy spaceport, where ships from a dozen different worlds were docking side by side. "Friendship," he said simply. "Real friendship. The kind you earn, not the kind you demand. The kind that makes everyone stronger, not just the ones at the top." Lisa smiled. It was the first real smile he had seen from her in months. "The galaxy is changing," she said. "Yes," Daniel agreed. "And for once, it is changing for the better." Outside the window, a Calthusian medical ship docked beside a Tesseron cargo vessel. Their crews waved at each other through the viewports. Different species, different worlds, but working together, learning together, growing together. The old order was dying. A new one was being born. 5 years had passed since humanity walked out of the Council chamber. 5 years since Ambassador Daniel Price had spoken those words that changed everything. 5 years since the galaxy learned the price of disrespect. The universe was a different place now. Admiral Lisa Hartley stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, a massive structure floating in the heart of what had once been Council space. Through the viewports, she could see ships from 100 different worlds moving together in perfect coordination. Human vessels flew beside Tesseron traders. Calthusian medical ships docked next to Marathi transports. Species that had once been enemies now worked side by side. Unity Station had been built by everyone together. Humans designed the core systems. Tesserans grew the food gardens that filled the lower levels. Calthusians ran the medical centers. Even some of the former Council species had contributed. After they had proven they could be trusted, it was not an empire. It was not a council of masters. It was a partnership, and it worked. Daniel Price walked up beside her. He was older now, nearly 70, but his eyes were still sharp and his mind still quick. He had spent the last 5 years traveling from world to world, building connections, solving problems, and teaching others how to work together. "We received a message today," he said, "from the last Vela-3 colony." Lisa turned to look at him. "The Vela-3? I thought they were finished." "Almost," Daniel said. "Their homeworld fell to the Kethrani 2 years ago. Most of their species scattered across the galaxy. But one colony survived. They have been hiding in the outer territories, trying to rebuild, and now they want our help. They want partnership status, full terms, equal partnership with all the rights and responsibilities that come with it. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. She remembered the High Speaker who had laughed at them in the council chamber. She remembered the votes against humanity, the mockery, the dismissal. The Velithri had been the worst of all the council species. They had treated humans like insects. What do you think? She finally asked. Daniel looked out at the station, at the hundreds of species working together in harmony. I think everyone deserves a second chance, he said. Even those who once looked down on us. But they will have to earn their place. No special treatment. No shortcuts. They start at the bottom and work their way up, just like everyone else. Lisa nodded slowly. That seems fair. It is more than fair, Daniel said. It is what they should have offered us 300 years ago. A chance to prove ourselves through our actions, not our bloodlines or our history. A young officer approached them. His name was Marcus Webb Jr., the son of the counselor who had watched the council fall apart from Earth. He had joined the Unity fleet right out of school and worked his way up through the ranks. Ambassador, he said, we have a situation. The Kethrani are gathering at the edge of partnership space. Intelligence suggests they are planning a major push. Lisa straightened. How many ships? Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. It is the largest Kethrani force we have ever seen. 5 years ago, this would have been the end. Humanity alone could never have stopped such an attack. The Council certainly could not have. The Kethrani would have swept through the galaxy like a fire through dry grass. But things were different now. Send word to all partnership members, Lisa said. Full mobilization. Every ship, every soldier, every resource. We meet the swarm at the border. Marcus nodded and hurried away. Daniel watched him go. Do you think we can win? Lisa smiled grimly. A year ago I would have said no. But we are not alone anymore. We have the Tesserants, who know every asteroid field and nebula in this sector. We have the Calphasians, whose medical ships can keep our wounded fighting. We have the Morati, who can jam Kethrani communications. We have 100 species working together, sharing their strengths, covering each other's weaknesses. She turned to face Daniel. The Council could never have done this. They were too busy fighting each other for power. But the partnership is different. When one of us is threatened, all of us respond. That is what partnership means. 3 days later, the Battle of the Border began. The Kethrani swarm poured through space like a living tide. Millions of creatures, controlled by a single hive mind, hungry to consume everything in their path. They had destroyed the old council. They had shattered the Velithri Empire. They expected to do the same to this new alliance of young species. They were wrong. Human warships led the charge. Their weapons blazing against the swarm. Tesserun scouts darted through the chaos, feeding targeting data to the main fleet. Calphasian medical vessels pulled wounded crews from damaged ships and put them back in the fight. Morati communication ships flooded the Kethrani hive mind with interference, causing confusion and chaos among the enemy. And behind them, holding the line, stood ships from 100 different worlds. Species that had never worked together before now fought as one. They were not soldiers following orders. They were partners defending their shared future. The battle lasted for 3 days. Thousands of ships were destroyed on both sides. Millions of Kethrani were killed. Many partnership crews gave their lives. But in the end, the swarm broke. For the first time in centuries, the Kethrani retreated. They fled back into the dark spaces of the galaxy, their hive mind screaming with a pain it had never felt before. The partnership had done what the Council never could. They had not just held the line. They had pushed back. On Unity Station, the survivors gathered to mourn their dead and celebrate their victory. Humans stood beside Tesserans, Calthasians, Morati, and dozens of other species. They had bled together. They had fought together. They had won together. Admiral Lisa Hartley stood before them all. "Today we proved something important," she said. "We proved that partnership is stronger than domination. We proved that respect creates bonds that fear never could. We proved that when people work together as equals, they can achieve things that no empire could ever dream of." She paused, looking at the faces of so many different species. The old council looked at the galaxy and saw servants to command. We look at the galaxy and see friends to make. That is the difference. That is why we won today. And that is why we will keep winning tomorrow. The crowd cheered, a chorus of sounds from 100 different throats. Later, Ambassador Daniel Price found Lisa alone on the observation deck. She was watching the stars, her face tired but peaceful. "Do you remember what you asked me 5 years ago?" he said. Lisa thought for a moment. "I asked if you regretted leaving the council." "Yes." Daniel smiled. "I said I regretted that it had to come to that. But I do not regret the outcome. Look at what we have built, Lisa. Look at what we have become." He gestured at the station around them, at the ships docking and departing, at the beings of so many species working together. The council was based on power. The strong ruled the weak. The old dismissed the young. That is why it fell. What we have built is based on something better. Something that lasts. "Partnership," Lisa said. "Respect," Daniel corrected. "Partnership comes from respect. And respect cannot be demanded. It cannot be forced. It can only be earned." Lisa nodded slowly. "The galaxy is different now." "Yes," Daniel agreed. "And we made it that way. Not by conquering anyone. Not by forcing anyone. Just by showing them a better path and inviting them to walk it with us." Outside the viewport, a Velethri refugee ship was docking at the station. Its crew would be processed, tested, and given a chance to prove themselves. Some would fail. Some would succeed. But all would be treated fairly. That was the human way now. That was the partnership way. The council's regret had been immediate. But humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy was not a lesson in consequences, it was a lesson in what true partnership could achieve, and the galaxy would never forget it.